It wasn't a photo booth or even a flash mob, though that might have been fun. When we got married, we knew that at our reception, we wanted a really long, festive, and exuberant hora. Even now, a decade later, I can practically hear Hava Nagila begin to play as I look back on my favorite photos from that day, the ones that are taken mid-dance. In each shot, you see hair flying, smiles wide, bride and groom very precariously balanced on chairs held high. I love that the hora, a traditional Jewish dance, is easy to do, a mitzvah to participate in, and a tangible, fun way to share in a wedding couple's joy. Another Jewish life cycle ritual. Following the 7 days of Shiva, the 7 days of intensive mourning after the death of a loved one, it is traditional to go outside and walk around the block. Shiva comes from the word Sheva, which means 7, but also shares root letters with the word leshev, to sit. So getting up and going outside becomes a symbolic gesture of a shift, not only in body, but in mindset, as we move ourselves from the seat of a mourner to the upright position of our everyday lives. In our own individual interpretation, I remember going outside with my brothers after sitting Shiva for my Zaidi. Walking around my parents' cul-de-sac, our footsteps unconsciously traced a wide circle on the pavement. Our walk was slow and meandering. Not the fervent, joyful circles of the hora, but the long, twisting path of our grief. Our Torah portion this week tells the story of a wedding and a funeral, but the funeral comes first. Called Chaye Sarah, the life of Sarah, the story begins with her death. Mourning the loss of his wife, Abraham is bereft. Some of us here understand this feeling personally. We too remember our loved ones, the ones that we traveled with, took adventures with, the people who once stood by our side as we took our biggest risks and shared our greatest joys. The text describes Abraham weeping. We can only imagine his pain. And then, remarkably, Vayakam Avraham, Abraham rises from his mourning. I have been struggling this week, as I know you have been as well. The tragedy in Squirrel Hill has shaken me to my core and broken my heart into 11 new pieces. I am scared, and I am sad, and I'm angry. And through our conversations and gatherings, I know that many of you have personal connections to loved ones in Squirrel Hill, and my heart aches for each one of you. I know that for many of you, last Shabbat's tragedy reopens wounds of your past that will never fully heal. The ripples of our collective grief are washing all over us. We are all Abraham weeping for our beloved. And still, I am hesitant to admit. There have been moments this week where I haven't felt like weeping, and I have instead felt utterly emotionally depleted, as if the urgency and the intensity of these feelings have actually left me numb. I have readied myself for tears that haven't come. I have brushed off the topic of tragedy or anti-Semitism or grief because I can't stand to feel. And I wonder if any of you have felt this way too. Rabbi Jeff Salkin wrote poignantly about this numbness years ago after the devastating shooting in San Bernardino, and how I wish that these words were no longer relevant. I am starting not to care, he wrote. I'm starting not to notice. I'm starting to feel numb. The Jewish tradition has a lot to say about the role of numbness in the face of tragedy. we learn that in the first stage of mourning, aninut, the mourner confronts his or her dead as they lie freshly stricken. In this first stage of mourning, between the death and the burial, the mourner, the onen, is released from all religious responsibilities. The mourner is in shock, numb. Could it be, I wonder, that the constant assault of bad news, the rarity of a week without tragedy, has left us all in a state of advanced aninut, always sitting before our dead, always in a state of existential numbness? This Shabbat is a pivotal moment. As our Jewish brothers and sisters, the ones whose blood now stains their synagogue floor, as they are gently laid to rest, we return to Abraham. Vayakam Avraham. Abraham rose from his mourning, from aninut, the numbness and shock of his grief, to continue the story of Chaye Sarah, to honor the life of his beloved Sarah. My friends, the time has come for us too to rise. We are bereft and afraid, and I hope from the depths of my soul that we never have to feel this sorrow any more deeply than we do today. It is time for us to rise not from our pain, but in our pain. As hard as it is, we still have to feel. After Abraham buries his wife in the cave of Machpelah, the story of Sarah's legacy continues through the search for a wife for Isaac. His son's marriage becomes Abraham's top priority, making sure that Isaac is matched with a wife who exudes kindness and beauty and strength of character. As Abraham emerges from the slow, circular walk of mourning, he readies himself to dance joyfully at a wedding. As the psalmist wrote, and Debbie Friedman of blessed memory sang, "You turn my mourning into dancing so that my soul might sing to you, so that my soul sings to you and it not be still." We carry our pain and our rage and our sorrow as we rise like Abraham from this moment. The slow, circular steps of our grief quicken as we allow those feelings to rise to the surface. We allow it to move us faster and stronger and louder as we too turn our mourning into dancing. As we rise from our mourning, we move to speak out against anti-Semitism, to decry hate speech, to proudly and Jewishly remember never again. As we rise from our mourning, we move to reach out in love to our neighbors of other faiths so that they may know us and we may know them. As Rabbi Kahn reminded us last week, we are not strangers, but siblings. As we rise from our mourning, we move in the spirit of politicians and activists, marching and voting and raising voices even louder than before as we dance purposefully towards the polls next week. As we rise from our mourning, we move to make our world kinder and sweeter through actions large and small. Paying for a stranger's coffee, leaving an anonymous note for someone who looks to be having a hard day, being present for a friend who is not yet ready to rise. As our mourning turns to dancing, we move, not in unison, but with the messy and uncoordinated and beautiful joy of the Hora. To celebrate with the bride and groom is a mitzvah. It doesn't have to be pretty, and we don't all have to dance in the same circle. But we are obligated to dance it soulfully and with intention. We rise clumsily from our numbness, trying our best not to step on each other's toes as we jump and sway with raw and unbridled feeling, dancing towards a singular purpose. We rise so that we may live. You turn my mourning into dancing, so that my soul might sing to you, so that my soul sings to you, and it not be still. You turn my mourning into dancing, so that my soul might sing to you, so that my soul sings to you, and it not be still. Amen.